Welcome to this tutorial on images and branching options. So we're going to build on a project that we created earlier in an earlier session, but you do not need to know anything about that earlier session to benefit from this tutorial. So we simply brought that up by going to File, in our most recently used list. Here we have this particular tutorial on COVID, which we brought up. So here's that first title page. Now what we want to do, our objective is essentially to display images that represent best practices. The students have to select from the images the best practices, and they'll get certain points for doing that correctly. To lay out images, we're going to do this in essentially three parts. I'll show the layout of images, then we'll associate branching options to those images, and then finally we'll discuss a responsive layout versus a non-responsive layout. So I'll click on this little widget. This little sprocket here brings up a whole series of widgets. We can do a number of things on a page, such as add multiple choice or short answers, or add an image slider and drag and drop activities, etc. But we're going to choose image layout. And so this may be familiar to you. This is an interface that's used quite often in LodeStar. So we're able to add elements, subtract elements, reorder elements, or jump to specific elements. In this case, these elements are images that are getting laid out with the help of this widget. So let's bring up some imagery that represents best practices. So we'll start with wash hands thoroughly. We'll do that, and then let's put in a caption. Okay, wash hands thoroughly. We'll add our second image, so there's the plus sign. The next one is covering up sneezes, so that's another best practice when it comes to COVID. And then lastly, let's bring up something that is not a best practice, and that is seek urgent care immediately upon detection of a symptom. But what we'll do is we'll abbreviate this. I'll just put in this caption here. Okay, great. In terms of our layout options, we can lay this out by row or column, and we have a number of, we can have this all centered. So I'll just show you the difference. So row, center, we can wrap or not wrap, or wrap in reverse, and then the size of the image. So I'll keep it to 200 pixels here. I'll say no wrap, and then I'll center these images. Now, this will tend to bunch up the captions. Now, you don't see the captions here because you'll see those in the preview mode, but essentially this is just to remind you that at the top of the page here we have this particular image, and the full rendering of this particular widget will be available in the preview. But I know that these captions are going to get bunched up. So what I'll do is I'll space around. Okay, that'll give us a little more room for the captions. We'll go ahead and preview and see what the result is. LodeStar will call up your default browser and serve the page up to that default browser. If for some reason this doesn't appear, then I would leave LodeStar, start up your browser, and for example, it might be waiting for an update, and you can go ahead and address any issue and then try it again. So here we have our images. There are no branch options associated with these, and there's our captions. So now we'll take it to the next step. We'll add some branch options. In other words, what happens when the students click on the image? So if they select the image, what we're going to do is append a value. We're going to append 3 points to a variable called total correct. Now you can call your variable your variables anything. What a variable is a container. The container will hold the value of 3. So if there were already if there were 3 points in that container called total correct, then we're adding 3 more. We're appending. So 3 plus 3 in this case will be 6. So if a student selects wash hands thoroughly, we're adding 3 points. Under deselect, we'll do the same thing, append value, and we'll subtract 3 points. Now, of course, if you don't like the variable name total correct, you put in anything you'd like. Just type it right in. Now we'll go to our second image, and again, we'll append value, and we'll give it 3 points. And for deselecting it, we'll take away those 3 points, -3. And then finally, for our third, which is not a best practice, we'll append value, and we'll subtract 3 if you selected it. And if you deselected it, we'll restore those 3 points. So there we go. Now for the student to actually see how well they did, we're going to add a page, and we're going to we'll add a widget. And this time we'll choose the embedded variable widget. And here what we're going to do is embed the variable total correct. So you scored, and then we'll use a curly brace, total correct, curly brace, out of 6. So 6 is a constant because we know that if you did this perfectly, you'd get 6 points. So, and then I think I'll boost this up in size a little bit so that you can see you scored curly brace total correct, curly brace out of 6. Now we don't have to declare a variable because we already did that in the previous screen. We don't have to add an expression. We're all set to go. Now if we preview, let's see what we get. So again, our title page will pop up in the browser. And we'll go to the second page rather. Now, if we simply selected wash hands, now you can tell this has been selected now. I get the border. If we do that, can you anticipate what the value of total correct is? How did you do? So 3, we're given 3 points for this. Now imagine what we should get now. So we've selected a best practice, and then we selected something that is not advised. And so this was 3 minus 3, and that's what we should now see. Total correct is now 0. If we deselected that, and so now this is the perfect answer, we should get 6 out of 6, and we did. Great. Now finally, let's just talk about responsiveness. Now, we chose not to wrap. And, and if we knew that our students were just going to be using, desktop or iPads and so forth, that would be perfectly fine. But LodeStar with this widget will not shrink down the image to ensure that all 3 images are appearing in a row. So what happens if we start to, it does the best that it can, it starts to reduce the space between, but at some point now we're losing information if the screen is too small. So to address that, we can choose to wrap. And now this becomes much more responsive. Rather than shrinking down the images so that they're indecipherable, what we're doing is relaying out the image. So we're wrapping. If there's not enough space for the 3 images on row 1, it'll bump the image to a new row. So let's watch that happen. So here we go, we're squeezing it in, and then boom. Now you can see that we have a smaller screen size. Let's keep going. And now this is still very, very usable because you can still select your image and you can still see your results. So this is, if you can get away with this, if wrapping doesn't completely destroy your design, I would suggest that, just so that this is more responsive. It'll operate well, display well on a whole range of devices. So to summarize, what we did is we used the image layout widget to lay out 3 images. And then of course you could add as many images as you wanted to. And if you were wrapping, things will get laid out nicely. So we added our 3 images, then we associated branch options with those images. And then finally, to display the results to the student, we added an embedded variable widget, and then we wrapped our variable name in curly braces. Now there's no magic to the name we chose here. We could have called this anything. We could have said, could have done this, total points, or we could have just simply said points. So if I would have done points here and saved it and then deselected and did points here, I would apply that same to image 2 and 3. And then of course, rather than saying total correct, I would type in points. So there's no magic to the word total correct. We make up a variable, we use a variable, we're consistent with the use of that variable, and it all works out. So that wraps it up for this session. Until next time.